Yolin saying that Singapore is a bit off in terms of where its history, and because I'm very clearly sharing a smart city, smart nation in the case of Singapore. But I think two examples she cited gives us all hope. She talked about China really now building incredibly advanced smart city. You think back to just before in 90s, where China was in terms of technology. In that period of 20 plus years, they are now, part of the reason why the US-China trade war is because basically the US knows that they are falling behind the Chinese, whether in AI, whether it's analytics. So that's one. And then the second one, which is more current, which is of course the city of Jakarta, where Satyajit, who's the CIO driving both Jakarta and now given the mandate to drive the change in West Java, and then working with startups like Clue, right? Basically to roll out the innovation. So he's proudest, Satyajit, in the startup village that he has cooked up, so that he's showing the path of government working with startups. So therein lies the opportunity for smart city. But let me just move to just refer a little bit to, because a lot of the sharing has been on some of the things that you're seeing across the globe from Peter. We've caught a bit of what you said in terms of your studying of smart cities. So I would say maybe starting point is that all governments must lead. All governments. You can't build a smart city bottom up. It doesn't make sense. So all governments, and let's put it this way, any mayor, any governor, any district that's trying to prosper his own city, even as we see the larger trend, right, of people moving from rural, this is not just in Southeast Asia, Africa, you name it, every place migrating to cities. You got to figure out, now how do I make my city a livable city for those who inhabit it? Invariably, you will come to technology as an enabler. But the approach for all government is not whether it's technology, whether it is use case. It is how do I best serve the people who live in that city. That's the motivation for any smart city, any government. It's not because the technology is sexy, not because they need use cases. It's because how do I ensure the best living place for my city, for those who live in my city. Okay? So I'm going to share a little bit on how Singapore, in terms of use case, Singapore in developing, in the case of Singapore, of course, we call it smart nation because we're basically a city-state, right? So we are a smart nation by virtue of the fact that we are a city, right? So that's what we do. And again, the premise is not because we are trying to be a technology super hub. None of that. It is living life to its maximum for people who live in Singapore, creating industry opportunities for those who reside in Singapore, and then obviously communities. That will always be a motivation, whether we're talking about Israel, Korea, you name it, all the advanced economies that Peter showed earlier. It is how do I connect in a world where we're always on screen. How do I connect with those who live in my midst, right, around me? So I think the digital journey, I was just having a discussion with one earlier. I was saying that Singapore is an economy that's managed to death, right? We are master planned to perfection. And whether it is this journey that we've all said, 4.0 now, Singapore has often taken the larger trend, the government I'm referring to, and then now figuring out how do I build something that would enable me with my small population base, with the fact that I only have this limited resource, leveraging technology to advance the things we want to do in Singapore. And because of the way that it's evolved historically, Singapore has always been led by the government in instituting 1, 2, 3, 4. So you will find whether it is the various stages of automation, when the then Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew decided that, listen, because of IBM putting in place a PC that enables everybody down to understand computer and being able to be efficient and productivity increasing, let's set up a stat board just to computerize the whole of government. Because why? That makes sense given how tiny our resources are, right? Computerization and moving to the e-services, and then obviously in today's era, digital services. Okay, so following me here so far? 1, 2, 3, 4, government has led the way. It's never been industry-led. Government should bring the industry along, carry the citizens together with you. And then today, this was launched last June, and the pieces of the digital or the smart nation Singapore is building is basically laying on 3 plans, okay, 3 plans. So number 1 is this, again, no surprise, government is leading that. And it's 2366 because we are looking at digital government, 2 outcomes. Digital to the core, serve with heart. So whatever that can be digitize, we will digitize it. That's what the government has promised in Singapore, right? So digital government blueprint launched last June. Basically, it's the 2366 plan because there are 2 sort of broad outcomes we want to see. There are 3 stakeholders that we want to address: citizens within the government, businesses, and there are 6 strategies surrounding the execution of this smart digital government blueprint. Okay? So that's the first layer. So like I said, government has often taken that leadership role since the 80s. It will not defer to industry or to the citizens at this point. We will lead, we will show how it's going to be done in order to create the smart nation. One thing to say about what's the point of having a smart nation, right? In the end, what does this boil down to? And I thought I'll just reflect on 3 use cases where problems that were pertinent to those living in Singapore were solved because of the projects that were delivered under the Smart Nation program. So the first one was this. This was a case, and I'm sure it's the same everywhere in the world. You are living in a community. There's a dead cat on the street. Who do you complain to in the authorities to remove the dead cat? It will take us, for many, at least in Singapore, we were wondering, which government agencies do I call? Because when I call one, he'll say, this is not my business. Can you call agency B? Agency B will say, okay, what's this? No, it's agency C, right? And you will just, essentially, the dead cat remains where it is. For somebody living and who's proud of his community, let's say, somebody get rid of this stupid cat, right? Because it is dead, right? So the issue that was solved, and again we come back, it's only because we have data and because of technology that we're able to do what we're doing now, right? That's a simple fact. Previously, it will be difficult because the databases don't talk to one another. Even today, it is still difficult, right? It's still difficult. So One Service app basically allows a resident, you see the dead cat, you take a photo, you upload it on the app. At the back end, it will figure out within 24 hours, somebody within the government will be calling or telling you this is the update. Whether the cat A been removed, B we've fumigated the whole place, it's clean now, or whatever it is. But a response is given. And it is integrated at the back end so that it channels to the right agency, whether it's the guy in charge of the path, of the field, or whatever, right? That is where it makes meaningful impact to the people who live in the communities. Second, this is a case where we come back to agile and versus waterfall approach to software development. So the government is saying, originally, in Singapore, I don't know here about in Vietnam, but we had to use paper. We had to buy this paper parking coupon if you are a motorist. And then on the street side, and there are many street side parking, you have to tear these coupons. You got to buy it, And then you list it out. There's a capacity where there's 90 minutes, 60 minutes, and then you're rushing because there's the parking attendant who will be sending you a fine if you have exceeded your time, right? Very inconvenient. The solution originally thought of was this. let's dig up the road, put in a sensor. Then you know, which costs few million. So the team within GovTech, 3 guys, working on the premise that as long as we're able to have an MVP, a viable product, we will push it out to the public, even though there are bugs, So within 4 months, they push out parking.sg. And now, of course, every one of us can't live without it, right? Because it saves you the problem of running like mad to, replace a coupon. That makes a difference. And obviously, the cost savings. Because the original idea was dig up the road, put in sensor, retile it, and then have you be able to track where your car and all that, right? Last one, and this is important. Again, technology allows us to be citizen-centric, and that's the motivation of all smart cities, right? What does the citizen want? Instead of, again, figuring out when I have a daycare or when I have a child. In Singapore, unlike in Vietnam where you have a young demographic and a population, Singapore is a heavily aging one. Why nobody is producing babies? So one key thing that the government has been doing and been trying to promote is, of course, we give you cash incentives. Produce more babies, right? Now, let's say you have a baby. Again, now who do I go to get my money? Because the government has given me an incentive. Who do I go to? How do I know which agency, right? How do I get a passport? What childcare facilities are available in my neighborhood, right? So instead of you going to each agency, the Moments of Life app basically brings the services to you because you are having a baby, you register this in the hospital, bam, you download this thing, all of the services that I referred to, the baby bonus, the childcare facilities, where you live, your passport, what have you, it's all given to you as stages of life, moments of life, because we are saying that we all have significant milestones in a life journey. Birth being one, the second moments of life that they're developing is death. Why? Again, what do you do when someone, your loved one passed away? Again, many of us don't know where to go to. What do I need to do next, So again, a service that integrate at the back end multiple agencies, but for you, you have no concern. Because why? You don't know who, it doesn't matter. I get my issues settled. I got my concerns solved, right? So that's important. And I say all this about the Smart Nation journey. Obviously, central to this is a system and process that allows this integrated whole of government approach. Because somebody said earlier, we have many silos. Ministry of Finance has one thing they want to do, Ministry of Health has another thing that's going for them, right? In Singapore, since 1980s, very simple. We always have structure, and the key structure is this. The Ministry of Finance, the one who has the budget, always will sit with a committee that is rolling out all of it, whether it's e-government, whether it's automation, whether it's digital government. So the guy with the money will always be sitting with the one implementing, so that all of the agencies will play ball, right? Because the guy with the money sits with the guy who's rolling out the programs. That is key to the success of Singapore. Because at CRO Academy, I've been traveling, speaking to people here at MIC, in Thailand, to DGA, which is a digital government agency, to Malaysia, Mampu. All of them, the challenge is this. They've all been given the mandate of heaven, The one where the agency says, the PM says, deliver smart city or digital government. And then what they have is, okay, we've got the power. They think they've got the power, except that every other agency has told them, who are you again? Sorry, can you repeat your name? Why am I having to hear what you say that we need to follow? So in Singapore, how do we address this was the guy with the money sits with the guy that has to roll the projects and implement the whole Smart Nation deliverables, okay? So government has also decided that, listen, as a way to efficiently disabuse us of this silo functions, we are going to build a common government technology stack. And all agencies, as best as you can, follow us at the middleware level, at the data center level, even at the micro services level, so that you are not wasting your money by building your own silo platforms. That's what, at the government level, that's been the main driver for the last 5 years. Bringing back, basically engineering talent back to government, software talent back to government, because previously it was outsourced to the IBMs, to the HPs of the world, right? And then what happened was all of the government became vendor managers. But when things breaks down, no clue how to go solve it, you know? This requires, in the end, a certain will, I think, you know, and obviously you need resources. Yeah, no hiding it. A government that is able to pay to compete with the likes of Google's and Facebook. Okay, so very quickly, the second piece of the smart nation journey, there are always three pieces, always, right? Government, people, and industry. At the industry level, it is having another government agency, the Infocomm Media Development Agency, to drive transformation of key industries that are meaningful to our economy, right? So the thing that they have in terms of strategies is accelerating, that means 23 industries drawing up digital transformation roadmap for these 23 key industries. Compete, we will foster basically platforms for collaboration between end user companies as well as industry players that Singapore is grooming. And of course, we are looking at bringing Singapore companies out, opportunities including Vietnam, right? And then at the layers are policies on data privacy, research and innovation, you know, and then obviously the 5G infrastructure and the rest. Okay, so the industry transformation maps, 23 of them have been rolled out, of which then IMDA through grants. So I think the government in Singapore is one that centers on providing incentives to bring industry to level up. So that's money for them taking on transformation plans, subsidies, and grants, right? This is often used as an industry development tool by the government since the 60s. And it's a roadmap that they continue to use and trigger the transformation. SMEs clearly a big part of Singapore's economy. That's the hardest one as well. That's the hardest one as well, to go digital. But you can't fault the government for attempting less in terms of whether it's evangelists, whether it's experts, whether it is money to do that translation for SMEs. But still a long way. I mean, this is a challenge. I'm not sure in Vietnam, but certainly in Singapore continues to be a challenge. So one key thing about smart nation, it is people with building physical buildings. That's clear. So that's an addressable market. Yeah, that the IMDA has gone about. And if you look at the strategies, always, you could say, doesn't change very much in Singapore. Always is about how do I incentivize innovation? How do I work with industry? 2, how do I build talent pool? Always, given that we have nothing other than people. Always is that. Whether it's AI strategy or IoT, whether within government, building capability centers, it is all about getting people to skill up, right? And then, of course, getting end users to adopt 4IR technologies. So this is the part where they're working with property developers in Singapore for the smart estates program, all right? Very quickly, the people, this is the leave no one behind strategy, which is the third pillar, right? The physically disabled, the elderly, the children from low-income family. That's the bit that IMDA, the same agency that's driving industry, innovation, and development, has been charged with. So they will hold festival, they will go neighborhood, reach out, basically having the young teaching the old how to use your mobile tools, your digital tools. This was just last weekend, so Deputy Prime Minister, who's also the Prime Minister-to-be in Singapore, was at this particular program where IMDA is working with the trade union, the biggest trade, Singapore is only one trade union, National Trade Union Congress, to help level up, those who need, so that you are equipped to be able to leverage the opportunities afforded by digitization. Smart nation, smart city, all wrestle with two big issues. This is global, this is not just particular to Singapore. Clearly, cybersecurity is a risk. In Vietnam, we did an event 2 weeks ago in Ho Chi Minh, where we had a workshop on the theme of cybersecurity. I think what I'm heartened was that many of the CISOs and CIOs in Vietnam of the big enterprises are fully aware, because Vietnam is one of the most attacked countries in the world. Okay, so Kaspersky, the Russian software cybersecurity company, numerous reports, and Vietnam will figure, very highly in terms of risk in this economy on cyber security, where data is stolen, breaches are found. So I think what we are heartened is, of course, that at least awareness of big enterprises, the banks, the manufacturers, the logistics firms in Vietnam, they are aware that this is something they need to plug. The challenge is, of course, getting my share of the board and the CEO, right? Because every time cybersecurity comes up, everyone roll their eyes, right? Because it's bored to death. It's not revenue generating. It's an insurance thing that doesn't pay off, at least for me, in terms of whether it's share price or results, right? So I think cybersecurity and data privacy is something that is important, and that's something that I think every city will be wrestling with. Because as you have cameras, you have sensors picking up all of our every movement, at what price do you say, I'll give up my privacy for convenience of living in a city where everything is fed to me? So in Toronto, for example, Google won the bid to build a smart city in Toronto waterfront. But given where it is, in Asia, I think we won't have that. But in Toronto, basically the community rose up to object to Google being able to place all sorts of sensors and cameras to monitor where they are going. So that's one where they haven't resolved it. I think Google still has got the right to build that, but I think in some pushback, that's significant, And I think that's important even as I wrap up this, because in Asia, I think in Southeast Asia particularly, there was an IMD study together with the Singapore University of Technology and Design. This was released 3 months back. This is the first World Smart City Index of 102 cities globally. And I think one thing that you will note the difference between Asia and Europe and America is this. America and Europe price highly in terms of citizens, the privacy a bit, And then China is, of course, outlier. Nobody cares, right? Nobody cares, yeah. Use whatever you want, right? So I think that's going to be something that we would be concerned of, So again, realizing smart nation requires that all of the citizenry, the people who reside in the country, are actively participating. Because really, in terms of achieving smart nation or smart city, and I've said that China has very quickly become a leading smart nation. You know what I mean? So it's not a case where Vietnam said, "Oh no, I can't do it," because in Jakarta they are meeting their way towards that. So I think there is every hope, even as ambition, as Vietnam has ambition to build a smart city, many smart cities, in fact, right? Da Nang and over here in Hanoi as well as Ho Chi Minh, is that I think one of the things that Singapore has done was this: always do not, and that's why I think in Vietnam, my reflection on, for example, fintech, it's taken so long for the central bank to do a sandbox here. We have moved Every country around this region has already got policies to sandbox innovation quickly. But you know, in Vietnam, as I understand, the central bank is still weighing on this. You need to think big, yes, but start small. Just do it. Just do it. And act fast. Because the rest, we're in a competition where it's not just, we're no longer acting in isolation. Because the competition for talent, for money, for capital, for industry investments, it is across ASEAN. Thailand is coming up. Indonesia already is a unicorn heaven, right? Malaysia, we were saying, you know, has interest. Everyone has an interest to build a startup ecosystem. Smart cities has the trust because every government in ASEAN has articulated, I want to build a smart city here, here, and here, and here. Now, how do we get startups to be involved in this? Jakarta has found a formula. Now, how do we follow this? Yep. Thank you.